Howdy, howdy, guys. Welcome to 8th grade. I'm excited you guys have finally made it. I know 2020 has been a crazy year so far. We've had our ups and our downs. Um, 7th grade to 8th grade is a big jump. All right, guys, we're expecting more out of you. You're going to have MacBooks. MacBooks means that there is more power. We can do more with it. You're going to be writing more papers, and we're going to be expecting more out of you. So this is just kind of a quick introduction on what you can expect your 8th grade year in class. So about the first week, we're going to spend going over procedures and rules and things of that nature. Then for about, this is the normal schedule. It might be a little different this year because of COVID. But then we jump in and quickly review geography, the 5 themes, maps, things like that. Then we get into Native Americans. So we talk about early American groups such as the mound builders, cliff dwellers, and we even get down south to the Maya, Aztecs, Incas, and discuss that culture and how they have impacted our world today. Quickly after this, we move on to an explorers unit. You guys might remember our explorers from last year. People such as Marco Polo, Christopher Columbus, we have Hernan Cortez, Francisco Pizarro, Amerigo Vespucci. All of these people impacted our society today, whether for good or bad, and we can debate this and talk about this in class. So we're going to spend a brief amount of time going over some explorers. Then we move on to the colonies. We talk about American colonies such as Jamestown and Plymouth. And traditions that were started then still impact us to this day, such as Thanksgiving, right? We love that. We love to eat, get some turkey, things like that. That started with these colonies. And we'll talk about that briefly for around 2 weeks or so. Then we kind of talk about the path from the colonies to the road to the American Revolution. You have all probably heard about the American Revolution, but what led us to it? Okay, there's going to be things such as the French and Indian War. It greatly impacts the American Revolution. We talk about the Enlightenment and the Great Awakening. And then we were able to actually get into the American Revolution. Okay, we talk about the Boston Massacre. You know, is it really a massacre if only a handful of people die? We talk about the Boston Tea Party, where we have these people in Boston who throw tea off a British ship. We talk about some of the battles that impacted the American Revolution. So hopefully you will have a understanding of the events that led to the American Revolution and how it has impacted us to this day. You know, we have things such as the Declaration of Independence because of this, the Constitution, so it does affect us even to this day. Quickly after that, we'd talk about the Constitution because it still applies to us to this day, talking about the separation of powers, checks and balances, things like that. You can see those things in my classroom over on the wall. I think if I look that way, it's that way. But it's along the wall. It talks about legislative checks and balances and things like that. After this, we move on to talking about the early years of the Republic. So we get into figures such as Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, right, for all you Hamilton fans. So we talk about big names like that that have left a legacy, and we discuss the law and events and things like that. Shortly after this, we kind of move on to the Louisiana Purchase, right? Jefferson buys this huge chunk of territory from the France called the Louisiana Territory. He buys it for dirt cheap. Then they send out these 2 guys named Lewis and Clark, and they go exploring the Louisiana Territory to see what is out there. So we get to talk about that, and I love that stuff. It's really interesting. 7th grade, we may have briefly mentioned this. Then we get to talk into the actual nation of America expanding. Okay, we have the War of 1812, which was against the British again. Okay, the British actually burned Washington. We get to talk about Jacksonian democracy and some reforms, and then we actually get into expansion. Okay, we talk about westward expansion. People began moving west. Okay, why were they moving west? Okay, we talk about the U.S.-Mexico War. There was a time where the United States fought Mexico, and that history and legacy will actually impact the United States, Germany, and Mexico in World War I. Something happens that brings them all together again later in history. We get into the Civil War. This is a fun unit. We talk about the events that lead up to the Civil War. We talk about Abraham Lincoln. We talk about the causes, and then we get to spend a little bit of time discussing Reconstruction. Reconstruction is essentially the rebuilding of America after the Civil War. How do we come together as a nation that was divided? Okay, so these are some very interesting units. I think you guys will learn a lot. It's going to be much more challenging and demanding than in other years, but I know you guys, you're up for the task. I hope we have a great year. See ya.